concentration of people in the urban areas, of course, are massive, and therefore they are more vulnerable than any other places on Earth to the effects of climate change. They also have probably the best opportunities to, in a very concentrated way, to respond to reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
So I'm going to speak about Cartagena. Cartagena is one of the most beautiful cities in the Caribbean. It's in Colombia. It's in the northern part. But Cartagena is extremely vulnerable to climate change. And our goal with the project financed by CDKN is to make Cartagena a competitive city, but also adapted to climate change. So what did we find when we started this project? We found that sea level rise is already happening. We found coastal erosion and coastal flooding already happening, and you will see some pictures of the city. We obviously found increased surface temperature, and as in any other region of the world, we see coral bleaching, and we see malaria, and we see dengue, and we see health issues already happening in the city. But 80% of the city is poor. So we're speaking about development, we're speaking about population impacts, and we're speaking about a lot of vulnerable people living in places that they shouldn't be living. You have all the major chains of hotels willing to be right next to the ocean because their investment will be gained in, 5 years, but they don't see the long-term picture. What will happen with all that tourism infrastructure in about 20 years? But we're not speaking about climate change in the future, we're speaking about climate change right now. If you see this chart, is what is really happening in terms of sea level rise. And if you see that same chart in terms of the landscape of Cartagena, you see that it is already happening for the year 2019. The blue areas will be flooded. So this is what is happening right now. This is one of the major areas in Cartagena. What are we doing? We're actually converting sort of very reliable information into policy decision making. So it has been a real process to sort of involve the best science. Obviously, they changed completely their view of the city. They are sort of scared of what will happen, but they also understand that if they prepare, they will continue being a competitive city for the future, and that's what we want to convey. We're integrating vulnerability analysis into policy, and we have 5 major areas. Delivering information into the right format, something that decision-making people understand. We're obviously doing awareness. When we started, nobody knew that this was really happening. We're also involving the region, the coastal zones of the Caribbean, and we're involving the national policies. And we're obviously building capacity. So our goal for the time being is at least to have 3 real financed adaptation processes happening in Cartagena. And I hope that you all visit Cartagena in about 20 or 30 years and still be able to find a beautiful city with a lot of people and a good quality of life of all the population.
I'll present basically a case study from Rio de Janeiro. Actually, it's the worst catastrophe that has ever happened in Brazil. Well, I'll be presenting basically is a part of the CDKN project, sponsored project, that REDE is carrying out, still ongoing, together with the Earth Security Initiative, which is an NGO based in London. It was a huge loss from a touristic perspective. So when we talk about environmental disasters, we have to think about also all the implications and consequences. It was the first time ever recorded that 2 air masses of this size clashed in that region. It's mountain regions. It couldn't go anywhere, so it just kept raining there. And I'm just gonna show some pictures. So we had 700 major landslides in the region. So this is the amount of disasters that we had. There are 3 main underlying factors that led this disaster to happen. The first factor has been actually the orography of the region. So it's been the geological context of the regions. There is a very fragile area. There is a second factor, there is very poor urban planning. Brazil doesn't have earthquakes, didn't have any like major disaster in that sort of respect. And the risk perception actually was a major cause for all what happened. But if all this would have been taken care of course it would have been a very serious event, but not to the extent that it's been.
I will speak about an ongoing process that we are developing from Fundación Ambiente y Recursos Naturales and other partners. Our project is called Towards a Common Agenda between Buenos Aires, Mexico City and Sao Paulo. And the goal of the project is to promote leadership and climate citizenship. What we can realize is that the three cities have taken steps and made commitments regarding climate change issues. But there is a big gap between these commitments and reality. And on the other hand, there's not a broad social demand from society for climate policies at the local level. I don't know exactly, but in 2 or 3 days there will be a good announcement from the city of Buenos Aires, the city of Mexico and the city of Sao Paulo, because a G3 with the 3 cities is being created.
As we could see at Cartagena and Rio de Janeiro, we have the issues that is going in these areas were the issues that were happening before climate change issues. But we now can see a worsening of this process in the cities. Many issues related to climate change in the cities are the worsening of our previous issues related to the cities and the environment. We have a huge problem in controlling land value. And this is the main issue when we are talking about moving people from vulnerable areas to safe areas.
Nobody's talked about money, and I think this is really an interesting issue. And particularly, how do you ensure that the private sector sees the point and gets involved in all of this?
So this is not an easy issue. You need all the sectors involved understanding the same sort of vision. How to sort of bring the national investments and the local investment in terms of money to sort of agree on real projects. That's the main issue. No?
Who was the cause of climate change? It was us. So we caused the problem and we have to pay. There's no question about it. So it's and even though people think it's unfair, it's fair. If climate change is not in the priority of the people, and people don't understand the implication of climate change is not going to be a priority for politicians.
Cities are a microcosm of nations. They are closer to the electorate. In a way, they are easier to. Mayors can react faster than prime ministers. So in that sense, cities are also an interesting testing ground of all sorts of approaches for the nations at a broader level. So I think also in that sense what we have not just heard should serve as examples to the higher politicians.